everyone, so today we're going to be looking at the Worlds patch. 8.19 will drop in about a week for us on live servers, but that is also the patch that the World Championships will be played on at the start of October for planes, and then basically it goes on for the entire month, and I think the finals are the start of November. The World skins are also going to be releasing at some point during that as well. This year is Championship Kazakhs, which already looks pretty cool, but it also has 28 chromas. It's going to be one for every different team who qualified for Worlds. They all look a bit different with the color schemes and stuff, but the Flash Wolves one looks amazing. They managed to stick the eyes on the wings. It's so good. Also with that as well, they're releasing golden chromas for all championship skins. So Kazakhs will get one, but also Kalista, Riven, Shyvana, Thresh, and Zed from the previous season. You could also get borders, you can get icons for them as well, and it looks like they are tied to tokens, which I'm guessing you either buy or you're going to be earning from missions. By the way, this is not the ranked season reward one. That is the Victoria's skin line. This is just a skin for Worlds. I actually didn't plan this, but I have an RP giveaway with a bunch of YouTube friends down the description that you can go and enter. So I guess if you're going to buy any of these World skins, you can enter. Hopefully you win and you just get them all for free. Anyway, let's get into the changes, and these aren't supposed to be messing with our games too much, but I'm not so sure about that. The biggest one is probably the Pike Change, really. His ultimate execution damage has been changed to 250 to start with from 200. I think he's already a really good champion, and especially if you go for this like tank build again that everybody's grabbing at the moment, he just doesn't die either. The thing is, you can trade, you can do a lot of damage, like versus some of the weaker champions. You can probably like one hook into E combo and get a kill with Ignite, but if you bash him back and you trade back, he will run away, he'll heal back all of his health with his passive and be ready for round 2 straight away. That's the really annoying part. This time they're buffing his ultimate though, right? Nothing to do with that, so they're making it so that he can execute 50 higher health than normal, so up to 250. But now just to point out, Kai'Sa has 910 base health at level 6, maybe 1,000-ish with Doran's. Zyra, for example, has 816 at level 6. So this is like a quarter, maybe a third of the health for Zyra that you can actually delete now. That's pretty crazy. It's way more damage in the lane phase anyway, where he's already strong, but it's harder to mess up the execution. So it's going to have a higher chance of getting the reset, so a higher chance you can use this twice in a fight. I'm not saying it's always going to be like that, but more damage surely means more likely that you're actually going to kill them and get the reset, or less likely you're going to mess it up. Not only is it 50 more damage effectively in the first cast, but it could be another 300 total, 50 from the first and 250 from the second with the recast. So it's a pretty big deal for laning, I think. If you're doing that, if you're making it easier to get a reset, use it twice, grabbing 2 kills instead of 1, that will mean Pike lanes snowball out of control a lot more. I know this isn't just a Pike video, so I'm going to move on in a second, but he's already banned in about 25 to 30% of games, I think, and that is going to get a lot higher if these go through. Speaking of lane champions who snowball out of control, we have another buff to Darius, who is also banned a ton in games because no top laner really wants to play against him. So his W bonus damage has been increased by 10%, so it's now 50 to 70% scaling with the rank, and his E passive arm penetration is increased by 5%. Both of these are really good. They're more damage throughout the entire game, but I think it's the early part of this that's really cool. You've got more damage on your W to trade with, it's an auto reset, it's really good, and you leave that at rank 1, so that's great. It's already going to be a boost to rank 1. EU max second, right? So it's kind of like, and I know this sounds really weird, but having rank 2E at rank 1 now. It's kind of like having a rank ahead, basically, at least for the arm penetration. When you pick this up level 2 now, it's like you have the same arm pen that you would normally be getting at level 8. That is why I think it's so good. You get to lane with 5% more arm penetration for free, and then you get 5% more for the entire game when you max it out. So funnily enough, more arm penetration means more damage, more chance to get a kill in the lane phase and live up to like the lane bully idea of snowballing out of control. Basically, I think Darius will be even more deadly in the lane phase, if that could actually be possible. Looking into the jungle, we actually have some buffs to Kazakhs that we're going to talk about just in a little bit, but Elise does kind of need the buff, so we'll go to her first. And this might be the tipping point. Like, I feel like she's close to coming back anyway. So her repel, her E in spider form, the cooldown has been lowered by 4 seconds rank 1, so it's now 22 seconds to start with instead of 26. 4 seconds lower is a really nice start to the game, and I say start, but you do maxes last normally, so it's like 4 seconds off the cooldown until level 14-ish when you start to put points into it. The thing is, it's not really something that you're going to be using more than once in a fight, unless it's like crazy long or something, but it's so key to everything that you want to do, so you definitely want to have it up a little bit more. Her damage is actually really high though. She's really good. She can assassinate still. It's just she's not the best as you get into the game, kind of like in Italy, unless you want to take Dark Harvest, and that also works. The thing that separates Elise from other champions is her diving. Really, it's so good, and this should kind of help with that, seeing as it's her repel that drops the aggro, right? I actually told Foxy about these changes as well, and he seemed really happy, so I think we'll see some more of her. We're going to head back onto the support support now, and if you've watched my best champions videos recently, you'll know that I rate Thresh really highly, so this is why it's kind of weird. His Q cost has been lowered by 20, down to 60 now, and the cooldown has also been lowered to rank 1, so it starts at 16 instead of starting at 20. I think he is one of the best supports, to be honest, and it actually helps either way you want to play. Some are going to be maxing their Q, and they go for the constant hook spam, right? This is still going to be really good for them. Great if they hit the hooks, and great if they don't. It'll be up faster either way, so that's perfect. The cost being lower also means that you can fish for hooks a bit more often as well. You won't run out of mana as fast, and if you want to think of it kind of like you can throw out 4 hooks now for the cost of 3 before, so you're effectively getting 1 for free. If you max your E, this is going to be really good though. You don't put points into Q to reduce the cooldown anyway, so you just get 4 seconds off it for the entire lane phase while maxing your E for more damage. It's like the best of both worlds really. Once you've maxed out your Q, it's not going to be a buff anymore except the cost, I guess, but that's not going to be as important as you get later. It's mainly for the lane phase. So I think it's good for a Q max person, but it's really good for an E max Thresh player. When you play against him, it'll be more hooks to dodge in the lane phase, which kind of sucks, but also more chance to get fed as Thresh, so definitely a lot better in my opinion. Now apparently tank Nunu is actually doing really well at the moment once you have more of an idea of what you're supposed to be doing, even though I haven't seen him for ages. This time they're purely targeting if you're building AP. Tank will play pretty much the exact same, it's all going to be ratios. So his Q monster and minion AP ratio has been increased up to 70% from 50%, but the champion healing AP ratio has been lowered to 35% from 50%. The snowball damage on his E, the AP ratio is up to 6% from 5%, but the Willump damage, which is the area around after he's cast his E, the AP ratio is up to 80% from 50%. So if you got lost with all that percentage stuff, the champion healing will be worse on your Q, but that's probably because you're going to be doing a lot more damage. The Q changes are really there to improve your clear when you're in the jungle, so you're going to stay a bit healthier, and the E changes are a big bump in damage. 30% more on the freeze part after this snowballs. That is a lot. Like 80% is a really big AP ratio, and that is going to do a lot of damage. You'll be kind of easy to kill. Your ultimate does give you a shield, but still you're building full AP. But honestly, you've got really good AP ratios across your kit now, including a huge 250% one on your ultimate. So I did say we had some Kazakhs changes, and his W when evolved now slows for 20% more up to 60%, and if they're isolated, it's actually going to slow for 10% more. So these changes aren't that big because honestly, we don't see evolve W that often, at least not early or in solo queue. I think Kazakhs is good with Dark Harvest right now anyway. I don't think he really needs buffs like at all. Having 20% more slow is really nice for when you finally do get the evolution, I guess, but it's probably just like a nudge to make people play him just a bit more. In pro play, I know that they used to evolve W earlier to slow and set up fights, so maybe that is what they're aiming this at more, but it doesn't really make too much difference for solo queue. Let's move into the top lane now with some Fiora changes. So passive healing has been increased by 10 to 40 to 125. This is the healing when proccing a vital, by the way. So the damage is the same, but the heal is going to be better. Fiora's late game is already amazing, right? So having a better early could really help. And the plan from Riot is actually if you heal for more, you're more likely to trade and go aggressive rather than sitting back and doing nothing. That actually kind of makes some sense, to be honest. If you can heal more every time you trade, there is more of a reason to do it, right? And more likely that you're actually going to have a good trade where they take more damage than you. It's kind of scary though when you think about it. If you make her early too good, then you're letting her get to that late game that is already insane. So buffing a late game champion in the lane phase is always a risk. Another one that's a bit weird for me is Kog'Maw. They're changing his base move speed, so it's going to be increased a little bit, and his ultimate range is going to be increased as well. So more move speed is kind of good, right? He's the most immobile champion ever, so getting caught a little less will be really nice, but buffing his ultimate range doesn't really do anything unless they're trying to bring AP Cog back. Bot lane Kog'Maw doesn't really use his ultimate a ton. He does, but like a little bit of poke and stuff. He doesn't really revolve around it. AP Kog'Maw could maybe come back a bit more though, because this is really good for him, right? It's a lot of your damage, and it would be a really good buff. Especially with this change actually to Liandry's Torment. 5 less AP, which sounds bad, but the passive has been buffed. The burn now deals at 1.5% of your maximum health from 1%, and also it's now 2.5% versus targets that are slowed or movement impaired. So obviously it's not just for Kog'Maw, right? But I know this is an item that he used to pick up a lot because of the burn and the damage amp as well, and it seems like it's kind of moving more towards a tank busting item now, like purely. The AP being lower means that the flat damage on that is worse, that feeds everything else, but the percentage damage damage is going to be a lot better. It's actually 1.5% per second as well for 3 seconds per spell. So that is going to be 4.5% now instead of 3%. If you hit that twice, it's going to be 9% damage instead of 6%. You get the idea, but it's actually quite a lot more, especially if you go up to the 2.5% versus slowed. It's going to be 15% health gone over 2 spells, and that could be a lot of damage. It's not something I think that many people will pick up normally unless they like need to burn a tank or they just have some really good synergy. On some champions, it could be a really big boost though, like a Zyra, for example, or even a Brand, right? They tend to rush the item because they have some really good synergy and now will consistently deal a lot more damage. So that is going to wrap up the Worlds patch. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know what you think, but for now, I'm going to leave you with the robots.